Let's talk about one of the most confusing feelings in the world. You know the one. It happens after a connection ends, and you're left trying to figure out what's the difference between actually missing a person and just missing the idea of them.
I mean, it's such a weird feeling, right? You're sitting there, aching for them, replaying all the good times in your head. You miss their laugh. But then this little voice of reason pops up, and you think, wait a minute, do I actually want to go through all of that again?
Exactly. It's this total tug of war in your mind. You miss the incredible highs, the feeling of connection, the way things were in the beginning. But you definitely don't miss the anxiety or the feeling of walking on eggshells or just that constant nagging inconsistency. And that right there is the question that changes everything. Because figuring out the answer is the key to knowing if you're grieving something real or if you're just mourning a fantasy you built. And that difference is what lets you finally, truly move on. Okay, so let's really break this down. On the surface, missing someone and missing the idea of them feel almost identical. It's just this painful longing. But underneath it all, they are pointing your life in two completely different directions. One way leads to healing, and the other, well, it just keeps you stuck on repeat. So here it is, side by side. Missing an actual person is all about reality. You saw them for who they really were, flaws and everything, and you still valued their core character. But missing the idea of them, that's totally different. That's all about being in love with their potential, or clinging to that perfect version of them from the very beginning. You know, when you genuinely miss a person, you can list the reasons why. You miss the real stuff. You miss their consistent support, their specific sense of humor, the way they always knew what to say. It's a feeling that's based on solid evidence, not just wishful thinking. This, on the other hand, this is all about grieving possibilities. It's that ache for the what if. You're missing the person you thought they were going to become. You're missing the future you planned out in your head. You're not really missing them, you're missing the story you wrote. So, why is this so hard to tell apart? Why do we get so tangled up? Well, it turns out your own brain is kind of playing tricks on you. It sets this thing we can call a nostalgia trap. Let's dive into how it works. This is so important to understand. Your brain is a master editor. When things end, your mind goes into overdrive to soothe itself. And how does it do that? It creates a highlight reel of the relationship, and it very carefully snips out all the painful parts. And this editing process is incredibly selective. Your brain plays back the laughter on a loop, but hits fast forward on the arguments. It reminds you of all the cute inside jokes, but conveniently forgets the days you were waiting by the phone. You remember the fun road trip, but not the tense, silent drive home. See? You're not remembering the relationship. You're binge-watching a highly curated memory. And then there's another huge factor at play here: loneliness. That empty space someone leaves behind can feel absolutely massive, and our brains are wired to want to fill that void. Sometimes we get so desperate that we mistake the craving for any companionship with a specific craving for a person who, let's be honest, wasn't really right for us. Wow, I mean, let that one sink in for a second. When you're starving for connection, the absolute bare minimum can feel like this incredible feast of love and attention. Loneliness really messes with our perception and makes us put a way higher value on things that were, in reality, never enough. All right, so we've talked about the psychology behind all of this confusion, but how do you cut through it in your own life? Well, there's one simple, unbelievably powerful question you can ask yourself to get clear right now. So seriously, take a deep breath. I want you to get ready to answer this with total, brutal honesty. This is your reality check. Let that really land. Not the fantasy version you have in your head, not the person they could be if they just tried harder. The actual person, exactly as they were when things ended, with all the same habits and patterns that caused the problems in the first place. Would you take that deal? Now, if your gut reaction is no, or even a hesitant, I don't think so, then that right there, that tells you everything you need to know. And that is your moment of truth. That's the clarity you've been looking for. You're not grieving the person who actually existed. You are grieving the person you were hoping they would one day become. And realizing that, that's your key to freedom.
Okay, so once you have that clarity, what's next? What do you actually do with that information? Well, the path forward is all about finally letting go of the story you wrote in your head and learning to accept the reality of what really was.
This is just such a critical piece of wisdom, isn't it? You can't build a real, lasting relationship on glimpses of who someone might be someday. A healthy connection is built on the solid foundation of who they are consistently, day in and day out. Patterns tell the truth. Potential just tells a good story.
And you can actually hear this choice in the way you talk to yourself. Healthy missing sounds like, I really appreciate what we had, but it ended for a real reason. Romanticizing sounds more like, oh, it was perfect. Maybe I was the one who messed it up. One lets you heal, the other just keeps picking at the scab. So many of us wait around for that apology, thinking it's the only way we'll get closure. But real closure, it's an inside job. It's that quiet moment when you finally stop fighting with reality and you just accept it. It's you taking your peace back instead of waiting for someone else to give it to you. And this is why this whole distinction matters so much. This is the fork in the road. Accepting reality lets you heal and finally move towards something or someone who actually meets your needs. But clinging to that fantasy, it just sets you up to repeat the same painful patterns over and over again. And this, right here, might be the hardest truth of all. Letting go of a person is one thing, but letting go of the story, that epic, beautiful, tragic story we wrote about who they were, what we had, and what it all could have been, man, that is the book that's so incredibly hard to finally close. So I'll leave you with that question to really think about. Look at your own memories, that feeling of longing you have. What is the beautiful, painful story that you've been clinging to? And are you ready, finally, to write a new chapter?